Hello, welcome to another Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig, joined as always by Andrew after an unplanned week off, but these things happen. Life gets in the way. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going pretty good, Craig. I feel bad for anybody who happened to announce their engagement today online. They might be overshadowed just a little bit, but, you just can't plan these things in life.
Well, here in my little corner of the world, because they were last seen eating a dinner here or brunch here or whatever it was, people are hoping that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce get married right here in Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
Oh, there you go. Maybe they were scouting venues, not houses.
Right?
Yeah.
They're gonna rent a vacant house on a giant plot of land to have their wedding.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. We are not going to talk about that other than what we have just now. We were going to talk about the new record by Deftones, Private Music, and we're going to talk about Dreams of Being Dust by The World is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die. I'm trying to remember what the shorthand is for that band. I think they were on the podcast I listened to with the band members. They were just calling it The World Is.
Okay. Not, was it?
TWIABP?
TWIABP?
Yeah.
TWIABP?
So I think we go with The World Is.
Okay.
And that's
Why not
our
just
shorthand
the world?
now too.
The world.
I know. Because that might be too broad. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Before we get there, though, I wanted to talk about a last-minute concert I decided to attend. I'm usually the one making the plans and guilting other people into doing things, but this time on a Tuesday, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Chicago for work. I'm going to stay Friday night, and I'm going to go see Chevelle at the Aragon Ballroom, their hometown show. We are Chevelle fans, my friend and I. He's probably a bigger Chevelle fan than I am, and we've seen all kinds of rock concerts. We're out of bucket list bands, and so seeing the band in their hometown venue in a headlining gig is kind of like a new unlock. And so last second I decided to fly to Chicago for one night and see Chevelle at the Aragon Ballroom.
Who opened?
Asking Alexandria.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Do you remember?
I'm familiar with them by name, but not.
I sent you a text, and do you remember what I said?
I don't.
I gotta look it up. I forgot to even talk about them. I did not enjoy them. It helps if you spell things correctly. Chevelle rules, but they've got weird compatibility issues. Asking Alexandria is as bro as rock gets.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Like, technically they're very good. Good singer, good players, but it was all style over substance. And the singer was wearing cowboy boots, and it just, the whole thing just felt like style over substance, and loud and formulaic in ways that sell.
Yeah. Well, wearing cowboy boots is always a choice. That's
true. But I don't want to be so dismissive of a band just because of the way they looked or whatever, because they were good players and the audience really enjoyed them, and really what else is there in life, right? But
yeah,
not my cup of tea, Asking Alexandria. But I think this is a problem with a band like Chevelle. They get pigeonholed into a category on festivals, and they probably met Asking Alexandria at a festival, got along with the guys. You guys fit in with what we do. But a lot of the complexity of the melody or the complexity of the songwriting, the artistry that Chevelle brings to their music, it was absent their opener, I thought.
Yeah.
But so Chevelle was really, really good.
Yeah.
But I have kind of a running bit with a friend of mine, and I don't want to be too critical of Chevelle because they're really good at what they do and they're really entertaining live. But I think they're not as big as they could be, maybe, or not as big as some people would say they should be. And I think they lack some of the onstage banter, the onstage charisma. Like, even for their hometown show, it was like, "Hey, everybody, this is really special for us to be playing in our hometown. Here's the next song."
Yeah.
It was like the lack of connection with the audience, where the best front, and he's a phenomenal singer, phenomenal guitar player. When in the middle of songs, he is absolutely killing. But between songs, there's not much in the way of connection with the audience, it doesn't feel like.
You remember what's his name? It's Sam something, right?
Sam Loeffler is the drummer, and Pete Loeffler is the...
That's right.
I think. And then Joe was the bass player who's no longer in the band.
Oh, okay. So they have changed one member.
Yeah. So Joe Loeffler was one of the early bass players, and I think he was around for the Red and that first record. But I think maybe touring didn't agree with him or something, and no longer in the band.
Okay. Well, that's still a pretty good run for Pete and Sam. Yeah. I've so like I was a fan of Chevelle. Like this is one of my like street cred bands that like I was a huge fan of them back when Point Number One came out. And it was because they at that time were solely labeled as a Christian rock band. And that was like the height of my listening to Christian rock music. And it was, you know, that album especially. I mean, they've always had the Tool comparisons, but like that album especially draws a lot of similarities to Tool. And it was like kind of cool to have a Christian Tool at the time. I remember that being like an exciting thing. And then they blew up with their second album and then got even bigger with their third album. Yeah, so it's just nice to see that they're still around. I'm a fan. I'm not like a hardcore fan, but you know, I've listened to all their albums at least once, and their new album very good, especially the first 4 or 5 tracks. Like that thing comes out of the gate on fire. It does lose some momentum down the stretch. It was a good album, so I could see that being a good bucket list band to sort of knock off your list.
Yeah, and their last record, Neratias, or however you pronounce that, was really solid too. It's kind of weird that a band this understated in the culture, I guess, is still putting out such phenomenal music when I think at this stage of the game, a band like this easily could just be a legacy act. And yes, they play the Red at every show, and they play Send the Pain Below at every show, but they're mixing in their new stuff and it works.
Forgive me if you already said and I just wasn't paying attention, but did you say what the venue was?
Yeah, it's called the Aragon Ballroom. It's probably
you did say it.
2,000 to 3,000 people. So not
Okay.
ginormous. Very similar to a slightly bigger version of Kemba Live, the inside version.
The indoor, yeah. Well, that's a good, solid venue for them to be playing still, for sure. I mean, you know, again, I mean, this is a band that's been around 30 years, so
Wild, right?
It is. It's pretty crazy. Like we're gonna obviously talk about another band that's been around for 30 years here in a minute, but it does seem like there's quite a few bands that have really like sort of found their niche in their later careers and kind of know what they're about. It's good to still have some of these bands kicking around for sure.
Well, that's a perfect segue into Deftones because I think we are riding a nostalgic wave for 30-year-old bands right now. And it's not all of the quote unquote new metal or 30-year-old hard rock bands, but a certain number of them seem to have found a foothold in ways that maybe they didn't even find when they were in their most at the peak of their powers in their current day, you know? I feel like Deftones is bigger now than they ever
Without a
were,
doubt.
which is
Without a
shocking.
doubt. Yeah.
Even as much as I love them, it's shocking.
It is surreal how popular Deftones have gotten over the last 5-10 years. You know, we've to the point that, you know, again, they're playing arenas, they're beloved within the culture, and a unique band in which, you know, there's so many stories of people going to shows and it's like fathers and sons, and the fathers being there for the adrenaline around the fur white pony era and the sons being there for the Diamond Eyes Koi no Yokin era. You know, like it's just kind of funny to see that. But I would say the new album Private Music, which came out last week, for me this is an upper echelon Deftones album. Like, I'm not putting it up there with, you know, again, Adrenaline, Around the Fur, self-titled. Like, I'm not putting it there. But it's right there with Diamond Eyes, Saturday Night Wrist, like those kind of albums for me. Like, I think that this album is actually really, really good. And we'll kind of get into this here in a minute. But, you know, I think Deftones are in like kind of a stage in which, like, I don't know how many of these songs like stand out to people. I don't know that there's a lot that I'd be like, oh, that's an obvious single in the way, you know, Change and the House of Flies, you know, Be Quiet and Drive, like those kind of songs that were like, you know, Sex Tape, obviously from Diamond Eyes, like these songs that were like obvious standouts. Like maybe nothing like jumps out quite like that. But I mean, I do have some favorite songs on this, but I just think it's remarkable that, you know, 30 years in, like they're still putting out super quality albums. Like that, as far as I'm concerned, I know Gore is maybe one that people don't really love a lot, but for me, I feel like Deftones, for the most part, haven't missed with any of their albums, and this one just is continuing that trend.
Yeah. So, I mean, It sounds like Deftones. I like it a lot. It feels very good to have this record in my life, but I'm with you. I don't feel like there's a lot of standout material on here that screams, top of the set list. It's going to be a must play forever and ever. But I also think that a lot of these songs can mix in with their set lists on this current tour and sound really good. And maybe that's where they'll find that life where they become that indispensable Deftones song. But I'm still digesting it too. But other than, I don't want to jump all the way in, but the one song that sticks out to me is more of a slow, melodic, softer song. I think about you all the time. That's one that sticks out to me. But then again, I don't think that one's going to get the people moving live. So it
Yeah,
just
maybe not.
we'll just have to see how this material plays out when they start to really tour it in earnest here in the next 6 months.
Yeah. I think Infinite Source is one that really sticks out to me. I really love that song. Ecdysis. I don't know how you pronounce that word. Ecdysis.
Yeah.
I really like that one a lot. Departing the Body is really cool. CXZ, Cut Hands is good. Milk of the Madonna, I still really love that song a lot. So
I
like
think
I
I
can
think My Mind is a Mountain as an album opener sounds really great.
yeah. I didn't like that one as much as Milk of the Madonna, but it's still a good song. So I can name a handful of songs here that I really like, but this is like kind of become sort of Deftones lane, I think, a little bit of being really like an album band. Like these albums that you can just listen to from beginning to end. It's not about the standout tracks, it's not about the singles. Like this album flows really well. I think it's really is meant to be listened to as a whole album, which is cool. And like, when we geeked out over Ohms when that came out, it was really more on like the strengths of the highs. And with this one, the reason I like this more than Ohms is because for me, I can take it easier as a whole listen beginning to end. Like Ohms lost its power over time for me a little bit. And I don't, in a way that I doubt this one will. For me, I like this more than Koi no Yokin. I know like Koi is a huge album amongst the like shoegaze Deftones fans, the ones who really fell in love with them with the like Diamond Eyes. So I'm not saying like that's a bad album, but it's actually a lower tier Deftones album for me personally. It's one that I never really went that crazy over. But my point is this kind of reminds me of that album though, in that like the way it really feels like a whole cohesive album and not a lot of songs stand out to me. And that was always kind of how I felt about Koi, but I like this one better. I like these songs better personally. To me, these feel a little bit more like the Deftones lane that I prefer them to be in.
I don't want to be reductive about it, but I think of this record as being a little bit better than Ohms, but probably not having. I think I enjoyed Genesis and the song Ohms a little bit more than any individual moment on this record. But,
Yeah.
The re-listen of Ohms today, you do kind of get lost in the middle a little bit, and you're trying to figure out where we're going. And I do think Private Music flows from beginning to end, even in its down moments for them, which is still really good.
Yeah.
I think it flows much better than Ohms did by, a couple years later. But as you and I have discovered, you kind of got to give these things 3-4 years and then revisit them and see where they really stand. Because I have a tendency to get caught up in the moment and get really overly excited about stuff, and then all of a sudden I want to pull back some of my glowing praise some of the time.
Yeah, it's the shiny new thing effect. Like we definitely both can fall victim to that for sure. I will say too, like the one thing you already mentioned, My Mind is a Mountain, which is a great opener, but they also did nail the closing track in my opinion too. I think Departing the Body is the perfect closing track for this album, and I really love hearing Chino sing in that quiet lower register that he does at the beginning of the song, to the point at which I thought it wasn't him. I spent some time trying to find credits for this album to see who the guest vocals were, because I didn't think that was Chino singing at the beginning, but come to find out it is Chino. He sang that part, and according to Reddit lore anyways, they said he said it in an interview. I haven't seen this, but supposedly he was trying to record and trying to be quiet while recording because family was in the house or something, and so he just sang in that register. And the producer, when he heard it, was like, yeah, we're not redoing that part. Like, we're going to keep that in there. So that's pretty cool.
No, very cool. And I, like I said, I'm just happy to have more Deftones in my life, and it sounds really good. And it's come to a point with that band where I'm still rooting for them, and it's fun to be a fan. And even in any of the muted criticisms that I've had of this record or anything from them, it's all in the context of just how much I love and revere their entire career, all the ups and the downs. There isn't a record that I detest in their entire catalog. And so even when you talk about Koi no Kan or whatever, I always mispronounce that one too. I don't, they have so much music, I don't tend to go back to it, but it doesn't bother me. I would happily listen to it if I just decide to throw it on while I was working or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think I'm going to end up feeling about this record too. I don't know how much, when I'm thinking, I really want to listen to Deftones, I don't know how much I'm going to go and pick this record out first, but when I do and I listen to it from front to back, it'll make me happy.
I think a lot of bands who are around this long do run into that. You know, it's really hard to make a standout album when we have so much material we're already attached to and have 30 years of, you know, experience with. Like, that's really hard to capture that. I had a couple other just random thoughts too about this. I was thinking about this today too. Like, it is interesting, like, really how different these songs are than the stuff they were writing on Around the Fur. And like, there's like always a part of me that I'll never be able to shake, the, you know, 15, 16-year-old in me that always like, maybe someday Deftones will be like, let's make another Around the Fur type album. Like, let's really get back in that headspace. And, you know, I kind of like hope for that a little bit. But like, as you're listening to these songs and how well they're crafted, and you just realize they're just such a different band now. They are in such a different place that there's no way they would ever go back to what they were doing on Around the Fur, as much as I love that. The other thing that really stood out to me on this album, and again, this is where Deftones are just, I want to be clear, like, I don't think we can possibly overstate how remarkable this band's career is and how unique this band's career is. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me is that Chino is objectively a much, much better singer now than he was early in his career. And how many singers, as they age, get better as singers? Like, it doesn't happen that often. Like, usually it's more trying to see these dynamic vocalists, like, how long can they hang on? And I just find that like so fascinating. And, you know, the easiest, lowest hanging fruit is to say, well, you know, he's talked a lot about the fact that he's like, I think 3 years sober now. And I think sobriety seems to suit him really well. He actually, like, when you listen to interviews with him, he seems more connected to the music than ever before. And so it's just crazy to me to see, I don't know, he's got to be in his 50s now, right, Chino?
Yeah, I would think so.
50-year-old Chino becoming this like creative force in this band that is more popular than ever. Like, how many post-grunge rock bands can still play arenas? I mean, there's a handful, but it's not a ton. You know.
And this might be a flash in the pan moment of time nostalgia for them to play this size venue, but I mean, to ever get there, to ever be there for even a minute. I always think about this going back to the mid 90s when we went and saw Rusted Root in an arena.
Mm-hmm.
And that band fell off a cliff, but guess what?
Yeah.
They played arenas.
Yeah.
For two
That's
records.
Crazy to think about.
They played arenas, and good on them, you know?
Like, let's just do a quick like exercise. Like, how many post-grunge rock bands can play arenas today? Like, Blink-182 just did, so we know them. Green Day probably.
Are you skipping Imagine Dragons and bands like that?
Yeah, I said rock bands. Like, you know, okay, so I named two that I'm quite sure who. Like, I don't know. Can Bush play arenas?
No,
which is really just Gavin Rossdale. I don't think they can play arenas.
They cannot.
Well, My Chemical Romance just did, right? The Black Parade. They played a
football stadium.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So My Chemical Romance.
Yeah. Well, there's more recent ones too. It's not the Black Keys, obviously, but what was I can't remember the rock duo, guitar and drummer.
Japan Droids?
No, they're a little bit more pop.
They definitely could not play.
I'll figure it out. They're
Above?
huge. No.
Wow.
I'll come up with it eventually.
Okay.
21 Pilots.
Oh.
Okay. 21 Pilots plays arenas.
Yeah. I know you probably don't agree with me, but that falls in my I said rock bands.
Well, I mean, it's guitars and drums, and there are definitely some rock songs, and there's some screaming too. They rock a little bit. Anyway, I'm just doing it for the exercise.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, we're
so then now you're into like Stomp and Clap, like Mumford and Sons, Lumineers, bands like that.
Yeah. Like
Dave Matthews Band could, but they only play outdoor festivals.
Yeah.
Blossom Music Center and places like that.
But I'm just saying, this is
Sleep Soaking.
I don't know. Like, could Korn? They probably could on Nostalgia.
Probably.
I don't know.
I'd be interested. I'm not sure if they
Korn
do though.
Could or not. It might depend on who they brought with them. Maybe like I'm sure if they did like a Family Values reunion tour with Limp Bizkit, that would probably be able to play arenas. I don't know.
I'm looking at their set list. They're firmly in festival land.
Yeah. Limp Bizkit just did an arena tour, I'm pretty sure, a couple years ago.
Which is wild
they did
to me,
an arena tour.
That band came back.
They have like a weird like popularity now. Like they've held on to their popularity more so than Korn, which is interesting because, I think for us, Korn was like the more all around better band when we were younger, but
all right. So Korn is still playing second level arenas. So they'll play the Frost Bank Center in San Antonio, Texas, and the Bach Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Chi Health Center in Omaha, Nebraska. And let me know, have you ever been in the Excel Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota?
No.
Me neither.
But so these are a lot of the like minor league hockey arenas. Like,
sounds like it, yeah.
What I call them, which are still good venues. Like, but again, like Deftones are playing the basketball arenas, right? Like,
yeah, NBA basketball arenas,
NBA basketball arenas, and like I just think it's proven my point how much we're struggling to rattle off post grunge bands. Right. That 9 Inch Nails definitely could, yeah.
Well, they are. They're playing Rocket Arena as well. But yeah. Yep. No, it's a good point.
Queens of the Stone Age, they can play arenas. They just toured arenas.
The last rock show I saw in arena was probably Rage Against the Machine, but they
choose
tour,
not to play. They could.
Yes,
it's like the Seinfeld. I choose not to run. We choose not to play.
Well, and certainly Foo Fighters could.
I wasn't sure of whether I considered them post grunge or not, just because like they probably are. It's just hard to like separate Dave Grohl out from grunge, I guess.
Well, and Incubus had a big tour. They didn't play arenas. They played sub-arena type places. So anyway, is it time to move on?
You would have never guessed this, when we were, in college listening to Deftones. We would have never imagined that 20 years later they'd be where they're at today. I just think it's so cool, and I don't want to downplay like how cool this is for this band. And
also they're doing it on new material, not just legacy sets. Yes, they play all their legacy material, but they're still an active band. Whereas I think of some of the festival acts, even the really good ones like Weezer. Weezer puts on one of the most amazing festival sets you'll ever see. But I don't think of them as being currently relevant the way that I think of Deftones right now.
Yeah, outside of their hardcore fans, there's not a lot of people clamoring for stuff from the White Album and, their, later era. And that's kind of like another post-grunge band is Radiohead, obviously. But again, they don't play. Like, is Radiohead even still a band? Like, I mean,
they formed that LLC and everybody got excited, but apparently it was just to release the live album from the Hail to the Thief?
The Hail to the Thief thing. Yep. But one thing Radiohead does have similar to Deftones is this, again, the second generation. People who are fans of Radiohead for a different reason than their original ones are. And that's to your point, that's why Deftones can play an arena on newer material. It's because half of the fans are there for the newer material. If they did a all adrenaline and around the fur show, there'd be a lot of disappointed fans in that arena. They'd be like, what is it? This isn't what I came here. Like, they want to hear the later era of the shoegazier stuff.
Well, and this is probably the place where we should finish. So Pitchfork gave the new Deftones record a 7.6, which is the same score they gave Ohms. But do you know what score they gave 2003's eponymous Deftones? Probably one of my favorite Deftones records, by the way, with Minerva,
they would have given
Hexagram.
It probably like it's arguably my favorite Deftones album, but I'm going to guess they gave it like a 6.2.
They gave it a 4.7.
So ridiculous.
And then
that is hilarious.
From all I can tell, they deleted their review and they published a bunch of nasty emails that they got from fans after publishing that review.
Now that is funny, that part.
Are you effing kidding me? Andrew Bryant should be drowned in a capsized porta potty for writing bullshit like this. How did he get hired? Is he someone's cousin or fuck buddy or something?
Amazing.
Like, good on him for posting that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to do a review of a monkey peeing in its own mouth, you got to do this when you're on the other side of it.
Oh, man. But there are like 4 or 5 of these emails. It's well worth a read. So if you look up Deftones review on Pitchfork, you should read all these.
That's astounding to me, though, that actively dislike that album is unreal to me. Like, I don't know. I thought that album was like a revelation. That was like Deftones showing like, hey, this band is capable of being something bigger than what we thought they were. Like, to me, that's the album that set them on the path to get to where they're at today. Like, that was the turning point.
I liked Saturday Night Risk, but for a long time, I thought that was where that band peaked and that it was never going to get any better than that.
Yeah, and here we are.
Yeah. So should we move on to The World Is?
Yeah. I think we did it. I just wanted to make sure we did proper service to both of our absolute favorite bands of all time, Deftones. It's just awesome. I love having new music that still is inspiring from this band. I'm so proud of them.
Yeah, me too. All right, this is the last time I'm going to list the entire band name. The World Is a Beautiful Place, and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die. Heretofore known as The World Is, released a record called Dreams of Being Dust. You and I were unbelievably excited for this based on the pre-release tracks and how heavy and different it sounded. This is a band that was part of the 2010s emo revival. They were experimental. They were somewhere in the prog emo, but they were definitely on the softer side, experimental side. Yes, they got a little heavy from time to time, but it was the exception, not the rule. And now here we are 15 years later, and this band is finding ways to surprise absolutely everybody. Their last record was Illusory Walls, which was probably my big jumping on point with the band. It was definitely a little more prog. The polish in the studio on that record was really notable to me, and I loved the way that whole thing sounded. I loved how long the songs were and all the different movements and how everything breathed and how the singers worked together. I think it's Katie Dvorak and David Bello are the two singers, and the guitar work. Just everything about that record. It was one of my most listened to records of 2021, and it's felt like a really long 4 years. We had a live record and a documentary, so it hasn't been completely quiet, but it feels like it's been a long time.
I'm going to jump in real quick right there because this is fascinating to me. Because my perception is actually 100% different on the length that it's been since Illusory Walls. Illusory. What a strange word. Because I saw when you had posted, I think it was on Twitter or something, you had posted something like, it took a long time to get here, but you did it, or something like that. And I was like, what is Craig talking about? That album came out like 2 years ago. I literally thought it seemed like it had been like 2 years. I did not realize it had been this long since that album came out. And I don't know if it's because I still listen to it a fair amount, that like that's one that has stuck with me, and like I still listen to it a decent amount. So maybe that's why it just didn't seem as distant to me. But anyways, I just thought that was funny when you were like, oh, it just seemed like a long 4 years or something. And I was like, man, for me, it was like a quick 2 years.
So anyway, the new record came out. It was just a total mind bender the first time listening
Yeah.
through it. What did you feel like the first time you listened to it?
I felt like in a very similar way, I'm going to like probably repeat a lot of the things I said about the new the Armed album, that it is such a striking piece of commentary on our modern existence and society and life in this country, all that stuff. Like, it is very on the point of things that are happening right now in the world, and you feel all of it through this music, and it makes it resonate in a visceral way with me that very few albums this year have. And the reason why I'm specifically mentioning this is, again, not to jump right to the Pitchfork review, but the Pitchfork review on this really struck me because they talked about like feeling like there wasn't emotional depth in this. And I feel very, very differently about this. And maybe this is because, you know, you talked about they started out as an emo band with some post rock elements, and like
Yeah.
now they've moved in the sort of vein of screamo with post hardcore elements. It's like they amped everything up to another level. So maybe if you don't resonate with this kind of music as much, maybe you would feel like, well, there was more emotional depth when they were emo. You know, I mean, which again would probably make sense, like just based on what emo is, and like, you know, the whole emo standing for emotional, like that. I get it. But I really think that this feels like a band that had a lot to say on this. And in the similar way, when you had talked about Tony Wolski of The Armed delivering every line like it was the most important thing in the world he had to say, I feel that way about a lot of the lyrics on this and the songs and the vocal deliveries. And I'm not just talking about the screaming, even the singing just to me feels, it's just oozing and dripping with urgency. And
that's a good
like
point, because there are a lot of guest vocalists on this record who scream, but David Bellow and Katie Dvorak's vocals, the lines they deliver are also caustic, absolutely caustic.
Yeah. And so I just really appreciate, you know, this band stepping even further outside of their lane and doing something to make a statement. And yeah, I love this album because I love aggressive music. And so of course, like
They
I'm
leaned into our area.
Yeah, so of course I'm going to be in on this, but I do think even for a aggressive album, you know, sort of a post-hardcore sound, like they do it really well. This is not a band that's playing the part of a tourist in it. Like they sound like they believe in it, and like that this is what they were born to make. And they could very well move on with their next album and go in an entirely different direction. But
well, let me talk a little bit about that, because I've been studying and listening to some of the interviews. And so one of the driving forces of the band is Chris Teddy. He plays guitar. He does the production for the record, and he does production with other bands as well. And so he's constantly working with a lot of these really heavy bands. So their social media has been really active in a good way since the record came out. And so I think Chris runs the Twitter account too. So he was reacting to a good review, but kind of commenting on it. So he wasn't complaining about the review, but he wrote, while the write-up mentions us, quote, doubling down on prog influences, unquote, I can honestly say that wasn't an influence at all on Dreams of Being Dust. Realistically, I would say instrumentally it was more so Failure, Poison the Well. I don't know TDEP. Is that an obvious one?
TDEP.
The Dillinger Escape Plan, Fear Before the March of Flames, Quicksand, Godspeed You Black Emperor. I got to go through all the shorthand. Hum, Aphex Twin, Sunny Day Real Estate, Chat Pile, and also, of course, Russian Circles and Cave In.
Like to his point, I hear all of those influences. There was nothing you said there that I was like, really? Maybe a little bit like Hum. I don't know that I hear a ton of Hum in this.
I don't really either.
You know, but the rest of them, I hear almost all of those influences.
Yeah. So let's go through some of the songs, because I can't wait to get to tracks 4 and 5, but I want to see if you have much to say about 1, 2, and 3 first.
I don't know who did the vocals, because Track 2, Se Sufre Pero Se Goza, it has a guest part by Counterparts, but that's vocal delivery of late in that song sounds so much like Deftones, like earlier era Deftones. Like when I was listening to it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like because I've been listening to it on the same day a new Deftones album came out, and that really struck me, like how much that part sounded like Deftones. I don't know who sang the vocals on that.
Well, yeah, I don't know Counterparts very well.
Yeah, and I don't either, so I can't speak to those vocals. But that stood out to me. And then both Dim Sun and No Pilgrim are both just super heavy songs, like really into that post-hardcore sound that I was talking about. Like they're leaning into it on those songs.
I saw all the guest vocalists listed somewhere, and now I'm trying to find it again. I had
know,
it.
Full of Hell, Church Tongue.
So Brendan Murphy sang on Se Sufre Pero Se Goza.
Yeah.
And then Brendan Padasek was also on that. No, he did engineering. God, it's so hard. Oh, I've got it all here now. All right. So that's it for Se Sufre Pero Se Goza.
Yeah.
Which, like,
fun song title to say, but you'll never remember it when you're not looking at it.
Well, when you don't need radio DJs to say it anymore, it doesn't really matter what you name your songs, right?
That's true. Yep.
But I think the moment, and this is not to wave away the second half of the record, but I don't think there's any moment on the record bigger than the transition from Beware the Centrist into Oubliette.
It's so freaking good.
The most caustic song, the most aggressive song probably on the entire record, probably in the band's entire career, with no guest vocalist, which was shocking to me when I saw it. To hear Katie Dvorak screaming was a shock to me in a good way. But to hear that song and then going into maybe the most beautiful track on the record, just an absolute standout. It led me to believe that this band absolutely was just doing exactly what it wanted to, with no pretense and no care in the world for the way that it would come across. Take it or leave it. This is our art. This is how we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I've thrown the word post-hardcore around a lot in this conversation, but Beware the Centrist, you can drop the post off of that. That's a hardcore song. It just is. Beware the Centrist is a traditional hardcore song, which is really cool. But then going into Oubliette, like, it somehow makes it even more powerful, that release after Beware the Centrist. And I think Oubliette is my favorite song on this album. It's just stunningly beautiful from beginning to end. The arrangements are great. This goes into sort of the post-rock side of them that they often will do, building these like vast soundscapes and just really great vocals. I don't know if I would feel that this is my favorite song on the album if it wasn't where it is in the album or in the track listing in the order. Like I just feel like it gets so much more weight because it's such a release after Beware the Centrist.
Yeah, and it has this kind of little slow pace. Almost sounds like a pace the Beatles would have put on the White Album, and it kind of meanders and jumps in and out in the way that the Beatles would have done right after a hardcore song. And yeah, it hits some minor chords that the Beatles probably never would have hit. It's wonderful. I absolutely love that song. I'm not so sure that I can rank it ahead of Auguries of Guilt, which for me sounds like it could have been a track from Illusory Walls, and that's probably why I love it so much. But it's just, this is why pre-release tracks are great, but hearing them in their context over the course of an entire record in their artistic form is the absolute way to take in and comment on a record.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I really like though too, that like right after Oubliette, they go right back into the post-hardcore
with Captagon.
You know, Captagon with just a striking heavy riff. Like that thing is gnarly.
Church
that riff.
Tongue.
That is so good. Yeah. Okay.
That's
that's right.
Mike Sugars.
That's right. And that makes sense. That Church Tongue playing with them on that one. And then, you know, you kind of go into Dissolving, which is a little bit more of a hook in that one, a little bit of a catchier.
Yeah, Dissolving is another one that is kind of harkens back to Illusory Walls or previous. It sounds like old The World Is.
Yeah. Yep,
and
for
not in a
sure.
bad way.
No, it's very, I love that song. The next two tracks are probably like the part where they lose me a little bit on this album. I both Reject All and Submit. I mean, I like that song, but I'm not like blown away by it. And December 4th, 2024, which I don't know if we want to talk about like the lyrical content of this.
Sure we
do. Yeah, this is a lot of this album is making a lot of pretty strong political points. And this is definitely assuming that, I don't know if both David and Kate, is it Kate?
Katie Dvorak, I
Katie.
think.
I don't know if they both write lyrics or just David does, but I'll just say like this is definitely a band that is further left politically than I am.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. December 4th, 2024 is when the CEO of United Health was murdered on the streets of Manhattan.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where it's like, I can appreciate and agree with any discussion about the problems with, healthcare in this country. I know obviously the insurance side of it hits close to home with you, but like when
For the record, I own an insurance agency. We do nothing with health insurance.
Well, yeah,
If you're upset at your auto,
not health insurance.
if you don't like your auto or home insurance, I'm your guy. But if you don't like your health insurance, I'm with you. I also suffer from bad health insurance experiences.
Yeah. But like I've had a hard time connecting with any like glorification of violence. Like I just don't. And this is where like I'm sort of more of the subject matter of beware the centrist, I guess, because like I'm not willing to condone violence when it matches my cause, because I always view it as like, well, the other side is going to believe in their causes, and who's to say everybody doesn't have their own right to their opinions? And if suddenly we're promoting violence in the name of opinion, it becomes problematic. It's a big slippery slope that I don't want to go down. And so for me, I don't resonate with, the act of naming this song after that date. But I will say, I think that they do this in a actual tactful way throughout this entire album. Like I think that they do it. They definitely like check the box of making it more artful than, like even going back, like I always think of like Pearl Jam's Bush Leaguer. Like it was just always like a little too on the nose for me. Like I didn't think it was creative in the way that they delivered that message. Like I think there's more creative ways you can deliver that kind of a message. And I think that this band, The World Is, do a better job of that. But I will just say like, but it still takes me out of this album a little bit at this point with that subject matter.
So obviously we know what the subject of the song is, and I'm not normally a lyrics guy, but I read through the lyrics just to make sure that there was no direct justification of murder, because I will say for the record, I'm against murder and I don't care who knows it. It's just one of those bright lines that I feel very good about myself. No problem standing on that side of the fence. And I think they explored the issues, and they used the title to draw to tell us that this event drew them to explore the topic. But in no way did I feel like their exploration of it was saying yay murder or go Luigi.
Yeah, no, I think it's just more like it's just provocative to title a song this way. And and that's just the part that it just makes me a little uneasy, because it's always like, regardless of United Healthcare's policies, like there's a family mourning the loss of somebody that they cared about. And the human side of me always struggles to overcome like the empathy that I can feel for that. And like I'm not a violent person, I guess, and so I just don't relate or don't connect to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this one might actually be the hum song, the one where they drew comparison to Hum.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
I think it's a decent song, and I don't mind the provocative exploration, as long as
as long as we're not glorifying murder.
Yeah, if it was called Yay Luigi,
yeah,
I'd have a very different opinion about it, because life is complex and the world is complex, but I think solving problems in non-violent ways is something that I stand behind.
Yeah. In no way am I like on the other side of it, like for sure, in no way am I like supporting United Healthcare's practices and like the
No.
healthcare industry in general. Like I need to be clear about that too. Like it's definitely problematic, and we
Isn't it
need
a
to
shame
find
that you have to say
solutions.
that? Like,
It is,
you
yeah,
know, I'm against people being screwed because they got sick. And like,
yeah.
no,
That's my
that
stance.
it should be obvious, but yeah, no, you're right.
Sure, yeah,
This is probably the most actual politics we've ever discussed on the show. Thanks, the world is.
probably is. Yeah, probably is.
Which brings us to Auguries of Guilt, which is the song that I think that was the first single, and that one sounds very much like the band. I absolutely love that song. In context of the record, it very well could have been the album ender. It's quality enough where it wouldn't have disappointed me, but they followed it up with something really great.
Yeah, I think it's telling that the last two tracks on this are the most that they sound like their previous selves, or at least the Illusory Walls version of themselves. I
I
find
forgot to
that,
mention the last song is called For Those Who Will Outlive Us.
yeah, which is a gorgeous song. I really like that one as an album closer a lot. But and I think it's probably the longest song on the album,
It
right? Like
is
it's
7 minutes and
7.
3 seconds.
Yeah. I always find that sort of interesting when bands do that. Like they like step into a lane for an entire album, and then the last two tracks they kind of like recenter themselves a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. And I don't know if it means anything for the future and what kind of music they'll make and what they'll be, but I just found it interesting on this album. But I love both these final two tracks as well. Like I said, like this album, I love this album beginning to end. It's just the Reject All and December 4th, like if there's a part of the album where I tend to like lose concentration a little bit, kind of not paying as close attention, it tends to be those two tracks. But then they get me right back with these closing two tracks.
So the other thing that I learned from listening to the interview with Chris, and I forget the other guitarist's name. I, I can look it up.
I don't
Anthony
know.
Gesa
Okay.
or Gisa. They talked about how the record came together and how they found this heavier lane. The first song that they wrote for this record is the first song on the record. It's called Dimmed Sun, and it is a big heavy song. So they joined Epitaph Records, and they didn't name the band, but they were supposed to do a split with a much heavier band. And they came into it going, it'd be really crazy if we out heavied the heavier band. And so they
Yeah.
wrote Dimmed Sun. I think it was Dimmed Sun was the first one that they wrote. And the whole band kind of came together and were like, yeah, let's
Oh,
let's
that's
keep
cool.
exploring this lane. And
Yeah.
that
That's
was
cool.
so great to hear, because when a band like this that is produced and led by a strong member like Chris Teddy, um, it makes me wonder, is everybody on board with this? Are people being dragged
Right.
kicking and screaming along the way?
For
Especially,
sure.
David Bellow has kind of an introspective singing style.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't scream hardcore person to me right off the bat.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and Katie Dvorak, I don't believe ever screamed in her career with the band before this record. And so it was really heartening to know that this was truly a band project and that they were all on board going this direction and
Yeah.
doing it. And then as they were playing these songs live, because they've been touring off and on for the last year and a half or whatever, the power that they've been able to get and the doors that it's opened for them in terms of being able to fit in on this type of festival where they play Old the World Is, and this type of festival
Mm-hmm.
where they sound like the new The World Is,
Yeah.
and just letting them kind of shape shift for what they need to do for any different kind of an audience and still be themselves. It's just really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's a cool dynamic for sure. So I can honestly say, like, this album is probably going to end up being pretty high for me in my year-end list. It's just I I knew when both this and Deftones were coming out in the same day, I was like, man, that's going to be a lot to juggle. I listened to Deftones first.
Me
That
too.
was where I went first, and I really enjoyed it. But like, it was overshadowed in the immediate moment by Dreams of Being Dust. Like this album just really stood out to me as just a really strong statement. And kind of to what you were talking about, I think it shows that the band was all in on this, because these performances are excellent. Like the band sounds locked in and committed. Like I said, this doesn't sound like a band that are playing the role of the tourist, like I said, like they're not just wandering in to dip their toes in the water and see what it is. Like, it feels like a band that was committed to the bit, and I just really appreciate that.
I think this is foxing. This is this year's foxing band that started one place, grew, didn't follow, didn't go chasing, but found themselves in a place and created a record that sounded nothing like who they were in order to do justice to who they are today. It sounds masterful and artistic. It sounds like they're comfortable in their own skin. And even if it's weird and a departure, it's my favorite part of music, is watching artists do this kind of thing and kind of, at least so far, critically be rewarded for it, despite Pitchfork giving them a 6.2.
Yeah.
By the way, I agreed with most of the verbiage of the Pitchfork review in terms of how it talked about the departure and who they are today versus what they were before and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, when you just look at this piece of work, this record as it stands today, for what it is, for whatever genres it's hitting on, it's not a 6.2. It's in a world with I'm sorry, the Armed, with Foxing, with all these other bands, we know, and this isn't a copy of any of those things, but this is that same level of artistry, the same level of achievement. And whether I like it or not, and I do love it, but I know what that level of artistry sounds like. So even if I didn't like it, I know that this is more than a 6.2. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. Like, I do think that kind of is where, like, the context of sometimes a review just matters on who the reviewer is and what their relationship is to the music. But what I really appreciate is what you just said there, is you just said the world is foxing. and like give us that tour, the world is foxing tour. Like,
you want to talk about two bands that just don't really fit in. And if they toured together, they'd probably play the biggest rooms that they could play together. And
it'd be cool.
Those two fan bases should love both those bands to an unhealthy degree.
Absolutely.
We should, if we were a big brand like Pepsi, we could sponsor it, make it happen. It'd be hysterical to sponsor the Foxing The World Is tour.
The album of record presents The World Is Foxing.
The World Is Foxing. All right, well, that's a great place to stop. As always, I appreciate you. I felt like I was low energy today, but
I'm low energy as well. It's just been a crazy couple of weeks and months for both of us. So
I hope it doesn't reflect poorly on the albums that we just talked about. But that's actually the one place I want to leave you with, and maybe this is a mini discussion before we wrap up here. I think I told you this already. I just happened to stay up way too late that Friday night or the Thursday night that this record was released, because I didn't have to get up early the next day, and it was 12:20, and I looked and I was like, oh, those two records that I want to listen to are out. But rather than stay up till like 3:00 in the morning, I went to bed and I got up at 7 and I listened to them then. Is there any scenario where you would stay up till 2 or 3 to listen to two new records rather than going to bed in our firmly middle age?
Yes, there are a certain combination of albums that would make me do it, I'm sure. But like, the thing that I really appreciate is the restraint, because if you hit play on whatever that first song is of whichever one you pick, you're all in. You're pot committed. You're going to listen to both albums, so you're committing the full 2 hours. Then
it really made me feel like an adult.
Yeah, I love it.
All
that's
right.
Great.
Well, thanks so much for listening. You can find everything we do at albumofrecord.com. We're on YouTube. We're on all your podcast streaming platforms. We appreciate you guys being here. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.